appropriate diameter, theoretically I could use them again, but how many times am I going to be able to stretch that bolt before it fails? Right?
Okay.
It's like a little white sheet that you put the bolt next to.
Yep.
And it
It's
does
a little plastic card or a cardboard card, and it has various size holes, diameters, and it has a gauge. I can put the bolt in, and if the back of the bolt hits the card, it's too long, I can't use it. But if it fits within the gauge, then I can use it as far as lengthwise. Oh, I see you ran into the closed harbor, closed 22, and all that other fun crap. Yeah, it happens. It happens. So now that bolt is yielded. It's out of its plastic range. It won't stretch and recover, so I have a uniform clamp load across my cap.
Do you do it to all of them or just to the?
No, you do it to all of them. Well, go ahead. Do it all of them.
Can
What the
you
hell?
use the,
He can handle it.
You gotta sit the,
Keep your knuckles up so if it slips, you don't get
Yeah.
tore up on my block. There you go.
like block.
He cares most about the vlog.
Yeah. You know how much paper you gotta do if you get hit? You get hurt? I got a shitload of paperwork.
That happened to
Why can't
me.
you just set the proper torque on it on the other?
Because applying a numbered torque isn't going to be as accurate as applying a 90 degree. Because the torque on that right now, it's a few hundred foot-pounds. Probably, judging from the way he's working at it, we're probably up at 200 pounds.
So the torque that you applied, the 75 foot-pounds.
You want to try?
It calls for more than that.
Yeah,
What you're
all
saying.
that's doing is seating the bolt.
She wants to try.
Okay, so you.
No, you're doing
I
good.
see.
You're doing good. No, no, no.
Answer your question.
No,
It looks hard.
keep it there, because when it comes up, you can throw an elbow up. There you go, roll your knuckles up. Yeah, you thought this was gonna be easy.
Come on, Jose. Jim Horton.
No, he's sweating. Hold on. You forgot to do something.
Spin it.
I missed this part. Why are you making turning at 90 degrees again?
Because it's applying a uniform clamp load and it's taking the bolt out of its elastic range and putting it into its yield range so the bolt doesn't stretch and recover, because I don't need that going on down here. You see what I'm saying? The bolt, if you would have stopped snoring in Monday's class.
How many foot-pounds is it? How many foot-pounds?
Yeah, don't do this while you're laughing. You need to wipe your hands.
Oh my gosh.
A bolt can be torqued into its elastic range where it
Yeah.
can stretch and recover and
Yeah.
stretch and recover. In some applications, that's needed. Not this one. So I'm going to take what Jose's doing is when he puts that 90 degree, that bolt is permanently
Yeah.
deforming, and it's not in its elastic range. It's staying put.
It's stretched as far as it
It's
goes.
stretched as far as it can go. Any more stretching is going to cause it to fracture and fail. I'm getting out of the way in case that
How many
slips.
foot-pounds?
And this prevents friction,
okay.
movement from the friction.
This applies a good. This applies a uniformed clamp load across the cap to the block, but more importantly, it takes the bolt out of its elastic range and puts it in its yielded range, so the cap isn't going to be moving up and down there.
What is the
That's the reason why he's
foot-pound
doing it.
requirement that the book says for these, for the end cap?
It's like 35, 77, and then 90 degrees.
Oh, I see.
Híjole. I know, right?
Careful. There you
Should
go.
hold it.
Nice. Good job. All right, did you get the back one?
Yes.
Now, at this stage of the game, if I go to roll this crankshaft over and it don't turn, the fix is pretty simple. I mean, it's right here.
Yeah.
It's whatever the last cap was I torqued, locked it up, then I go to that cap, I pull it apart, and I check it.
That's why you're spinning it.
Exactly. That's exactly why I'm at. Every time you put a
Every time.
clamp load on this thing, you're going to turn it. Okay?
As long as it turns, it doesn't, there'd never be like a roughness or any other type of indication other than turning.
I don't want to say never be like a roughness, but it should turn smooth. Now, if it
Yeah.
turns rough, you probably forgot to wipe the plastic gauge off when you put your torque on.
What's that gonna do if you fire the
It could-
motor?
It could do nothing.
Oh, okay.
It could plug an oil hole, or it could lock the crankshaft up.
Oh,
I know when my brother builds race engines, he was demonstrating something for me, the tolerances are so tight on that engine, he took a hair, laid it on the cap, torqued it, and locked the crank up.
A hair?
Because they're running clearances like 4 thousandths of an inch. Right? All right, so now,
Some strong hair though.
so what was the initial torque? 35, 77, and then 90 degrees. Okay, now, we've marked everything, so if I have to go on a road call or I have to step away from the job for whatever reason, or maybe it's the end of the day, and I come back in the morning, if I didn't mark all this, I'd be like,
Redo everything.
I would, you'd have to. Okay, but I come back in the morning, I see all my marks, I'm like, okay, I'm good. On to the next task. Okay, so now that we're done with that, yep, meet George Jetson, Jane, his wife, daughter, Judy. I don't know where Elroy fits into that one. Or no, that was a dog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, so we've got the crank in, and it's torqued to spec, and it's spinning. Good news, that's yay for us. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna sink our liners. Okay, we'll sink the liners, we'll sink the pistons, then we'll put the front cover in, and we'll slide the camshaft in. Okay, so, oh, wait a minute, you know what?
With the square.
I was gonna say, you know what, let's put our.
Wait, we gotta check
let's-
the end plate.
I was gonna say, we can put our cam in there now, and time it, but,
Now they're from the bottom of the piston.
You check the end plate with
Yep,
the
yep.
rods in and everything?
yeah, no,
or-
those go in after you put the pistons in. Because if I put the oilers in now and I put the piston wrong, I damage the oiler. So those go in wrong. So, Mike wants to check the end plate, which is not a bad idea at this point.
It's empty. No, okay.
Oh, es que traigo algo, estoy haciendo así, le digo, traigo.
¿Lo hicieron? ¿Por qué te vas?
No, voy a Barbie.
Yo pedí el pan.
No. 35.
Just the beer.
You guys have spent more money.
All right. So I got about 9 thousandths in play. Okay, and I'd look it up in the book and see if that's correct. And I think Hellman's is something like 5 to 15 thousandths.
So if you wanna go lower,
If
what
it's
do you
in
do?
spec, I don't want to
I
go
know,
low.
but
If
if
I
you-
have to change it,
Yeah.
so you saw that number 4 bearing
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the shoulders,
Yeah.
I'd have to get different widths
Oh.
shoulders
that's
on
not
that
this here, huh?
to adjust my
So you have to
inlay.
take
It's like a
everything
shim.
out
Not everything, I just take the number 4 out.
on the number 4.
So I
Okay.
take, I'd pull number 4 cap, I'd roll number 4 out, I'd get a different thickness,
Mm.
and I'd roll it in, torque it to spec, and try it again. Okay.
Because what's stopping it from moving is the little shoulder that
Yep,
comes out.
exactly.
Yeah, and then,
So
okay.
Yep.
you just need a thicker shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually at a machine shop, he'll have that bearing for you. So, yeah, most machine shops. With Cummins, they've got such a big range that it's almost a standard production. You know, if you need something different, they're going like, really? What'd you do wrong? Now Detroit's a different story. They have a little, it looks like a little crescent moon. It's a little C. It's a prescribed thickness, and it rides in a relief on the cap. Okay, inboard on the cap. And if it's wrong, then you take the cap off and you get a different thickness, and you put it on, you torque it, and you check it that way. And Detroit's a lot tighter on their clearances. This thing is like Grand Canyon. What's your protrusion? 5 to 48 thousandths of an inch. Holy shit.
Engine with loose clearances.
Yeah. It's some build them loose, some build them tight. You know, they have their reasons. They're smarter than I am.
Take it
But
all apart again. Huh?
what's that?
I mean, if it's loose, you gotta take everything apart again. Huh?
No, if it's loose this way, I just take number 4 off. Roll it out, roll another one in, torque it to spec, and then apply my
So you
torque.
only do the 1 and 4?
Huh?
You only do 1 and 4?
No, you just do number 4. Just do number 4.
Just the thrust bearing.
That's the thrust bearing. That's the only place that Cummins adjusts the clearance for the lateral movement in the block, is number 4. That's typical for most engines. Cat, it's number 4. Detroit, it's number 4. Cummins, it's number 4. I imagine Mack and Volvo are probably the same.
So the reason for the too much end play is where on the crank specifically we're at.
So if you have a
Too much in play is wear on the thrust bearings. The thrust
Oh,
bearings
only
start
on
to
the
wear,
thrust bearings,
and
not
it
the
starts.
crank. Okay.
No, usually the crank doesn't wear like that.
No, okay.
The crank wears here on the journal,
Okay.
okay, and it wears on the main,
Yeah.
but it doesn't wear usually on the face. Right, like right here. Number 4, that thrust bearing is riding.
Right on this
Right on
dude's,
here.
Yeah.
So-
So
so
that
that-
doesn't wear out. then.
Typically, no.
So you
Okay.
do number 4 because it's the middle, right? Because you have 7, that's 4.
Yep.
So if you have a 4-cylinder, it will be 5, and you do number 3.
I don't know.
The
I don't know about
thrust-
4
The
cylinders.
bearing's a lot softer. so-
I know on the 4-cylinder Detroit, God, I can't remember if the thrust was actually up front on the crankshaft or it was in the number 2 journal. But it varies from engine. I don't know about automotive. I couldn't tell you how Toyota does it or Nissan or whatever. I don't work on those, never have.
No, what you're saying for other type of diesel engines, they have
Typically
4
6-cylinder diesels, it's gonna be the number 4. Typically. Now, obviously you're going to look it up. Well, Mike said 6 years ago that it's number 4. No, I mean, I don't know what it's gonna be 6 years from now, but typically, in the past, it's been my experience that most of your 6-cylinder engines, the thrust bearing is number 4. Okay. All right, so we've checked the in-play. Now, if you have a build sheet, right, it's going to list all your factory specs on the build sheet. So I'll know the running clearance for the mains, I'll know the running clearance for the rods, I'll know the in-play for the crank, I'll know the in-play for the cam, I'll know the backlash between the crank gear and the cam gear. And if that's excessive, then I got to put new gears on the end of both of them. Okay? And as you assemble the engine, you'll write in your measurements, and the QC guy, he's going to come along and look at your build sheet. He's going to look at the specs, and he's going to look at what you wrote in to make sure what you wrote in is within the specs. And if it's not, he's going to say, hey, whoa, your backlash or your in-play isn't right. You're going to like, oh, yeah, okay. And you'll make the correction. Here, where it's really easy to do, you're down a couple hours. Okay, versus if it's in the vehicle, you got problems. Okay, that motor's coming out. Typically, if that happens, what the shop will do is they'll put another motor in the guy's truck, eat the difference, and then fire you. You know. So that's that. Now, just food for thought. When you have a magnetic base and you set it down, lock it in place so it doesn't fall over. If you leave it like that, it falls over, lands on the gauge. Now you got to wonder about your gauge. I don't even like to leave the gauges in these things. I'll take it out and set it aside, and then there's no chance of that thing getting squished. Okay, so in-play checks, torque specs, crank turns. Better.
Hey.
All right. What the hell, man?
So with
Did my eyes go? Okay. Get a bigger bar. Gain some weight. Lean into it. All right. So let's go ahead and I guess we could sink our liners and our pistons today.
So we gotta
Let's see
turn
if we put our
the,
pistons in. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
rotate the.
So
motor.
put my engine, flip it over.
Flip it over.
Second.
Flip it over.
So do the orders and.
Clear?
Here.
Yeah, that wasn't good. Mike, did you drop another washer in the motor?
It wasn't me this time.
Turns upside down, the guy's laundry falls out. Dude!
Now this is one.
Yeah. You got it. You don't need to go
Oh
to
wait,
the
which
gym now.
piston is which?
You're doing your workout.
So I don't know about on the firing order though, I would think.
Don't worry about the firing order now. At this point, it's not relevant.
Yeah.
All right. So just for giggles and grins,
And
that's the,
check the
the
deck
scrape.
height.
I'm going to check the flatness.
Yeah. There is some gasket on here, usually you
Yeah.
scrape that maybe.
Yeah. You would normally take your laser Scotch Brite, laser it off. The hair. I was warned about people like you. All right, just for the heck of it, I got 15,000 here. So when you're checking your flatness, actually we'll use a gasket. That'll.
It's not a big deal that you don't have a straight edge the entire length of the.
You can buy them. They'll make one, and that's actually nicer because then you can just work your way down it. Okay. Now the value here is significantly less because there's a chance.
Yep. There it is.
So if this top of this block was shiny like it just been machined, right? And this was of this prescribed thickness, and it did this.
Wait,
And
are
if
you
not
That's
because
too
you're
much.
on the edge of that
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe.
No,
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 that's because
no.
of the
I've got some gasket material in here. All right, and I left it on here. I wanted to show you. This is what happens when you have
Okay.
a gap.
So at that point, you would take it back to the machine shop and
Yeah,
have it.
it would be machined.
And how
Now,
many
this
thousandths is
test, this check is obviously done with all this stuff removed.
that? How many
right.
thousandths is that?
This is 14.
14.
Now, the value for this is 3 thousandths.
Wow.
The value for
It's pretty
this
low.
is 5. Yeah, because your head gasket doesn't have.
Yeah.
It's not like I
How
could
thick
put
is a head gasket? Like a 16th of an inch or?
Well, that'd be about right.
Yeah.
I can mic it. We'll find out. So, when you get your block ready to start making your initial measurements to see if it needs to go to the machine shop, this is going to be bright, shiny, clean. Okay. And then you're going to start. You go here. You go here. 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 Now here's where you can get in trouble. Trying to get a false reading.
Oh, look at that.
So diagonally.
That's a good one.
Okay, diagonally, and then diagonally, diagonally. And if it fails anywhere, you're done. It's like if it fails the first time you do it, why keep going? You're like, oh, cool.
And
Goes
that's
the
used
machine
only
shop.
For straight edge only.
Yeah, this is a calibrated straight edge. It's not a freaking scraper. It's not a giant screwdriver. It's not an attitude adjustment tool. Okay? It's not a pry bar. It's a straight edge. It's a precision instrument. Okay?
Use it only for that.
That's all it's used for. That's all it's used for. Is determining flatness. It might be labeled a flatness gauge or whatever.
So you wouldn't want to, yeah, you would only want to use something like that versus something like a,
Yeah, I'm not going to go down and say, oh, look, there's a piece of steel in a scrap metal bin. Let me use
Yeah.
that.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, I could have it checked by a machine, and if he says, hey, that's a good straight edge, then you know what, I'll mark it and use it. But, you know, this is purchased as a precision flatness indicator. Okay? So that's how you would check that. And you would do the same thing on the head. Okay? So if you're lucky, you put your straight edge on there and it fails the first test, done. Goes to the machine shop. You know, like same thing with the head. Now if I had the block machine flat, I'm probably just out of practice gonna have the head machine flat. Because even if the head's within spec, whatever imperfections are on that, by the time I clamp it to the block, it's going to transfer those imperfections to the block. Okay? So, if I do this one, I'm more likely, you don't have to. Cummins says, hey, if the head's within spec, run it. Okay? But the price of a reman head is significantly less than taking the chance of putting a not flat head on a flat block. It's just, besides, when I get a reman head, I'm getting new valves, I'm getting new valve seats, new valve guides, new valve seals, new valve guide seals. Right? It's clean. I'm like, and it's probably $300. I don't know what I have to check with my parts people, but the heads are not that expensive anymore. You know, and it's just cheap insurance. I'm going through all the trouble to do the bottom end. Why the hell would I not do the top end? Right? You do all this work down here and then you put a junk head on it. Send it out and service it, drops the valve, waste all that work you just did. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. All right, so let's grab a cylinder, number uno. A liner, if you will.
You need a one?
Number Juan.
Juan?
Juan. Which hole would you put cylinder one in?
You check it through the bearing.
Whatever one that fits it.
Whatever
I'll
fits.
go with.
Get the hell out of here.
But this is one, right? Right here.
Well, yeah.
That's the front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, good. That's the best way to tell. Here's the water pump.
Yeah.
That's the front of the motor. Here's the oil pump, front of the motor.
Okay, so you just drop it in?
Just slide it in there. Now you might have to tap it down with the love hammer.
Whoa, whoa,
Where's my hammer of love?
Ya sabe bastante español este. Cálmate, le digo.
And you have to.
All right.
Don't you
now,
measure that too? Here goes it.
Now, it's probably a good idea to use a dead blow, a plastic hammer, because if I'm using a wooden or a steel hammer and I hit it here and I put a little divot in here,
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
we are toast, if you happen to be French. And then you will be called Damas. Right?
For the compression.
Well, you might not get the piston in there.
Oh, yeah, when you put it
Or you'll
in.
break the rings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, why am I hitting it?
Because you have the hammer.
No. Let's see if I got my special
Put it on this end.
Come on, Mike.
Get all that aggression out.
Come on.
Yeah.
Get it.
Think of it
Little
as your
bit by little.
passengers.
Little bit by little. It's flat. Alright, what's the next one?
Next year they won't be able to take it out. That's a nice one. Te quedó bien. Buen trabajo.
Hey Mike, so do you take the straight edge, put it here, then smack it? So it's max
No.
evenly?
How bad do you want to get knocked out?
Are you ready too?
Ooh, lucky.
Prison rules right there.
If it's your straight edge and your engine, you do whatever the hell you want. Oh, you scratched the number on it.
Oh.
Is that whiteout an approved whiteout per Cummins?
No, buddy.
Oh, you want my
Just
left?
what?
Oh.
Keep your, so when your hand, you can't hit none of
Okay.
this stuff.
Hold this. Look at this.
Oh, no,
No,
I
no,
like
no,
this.
no, no, no.
Just one?
Let her hit it.
Don't hit the block with your hand.
Okay.
smack it like your husband pissed you off.
Oh, okay.
Smack it like he crashed your Harley. Harley.
That's good. Little love
There you
tap.
go.
I did.
Yeah, you did great. You did great.
All right.
Yelena.
We'll send that to your husband. Don't piss her off.
Did it.
And it's got your fingerprints on it, so if
Come
it
on,
shows up in a
Yesenia.
murder-
Show muscles.
Oh, this ought to be good.
There you go.
Beat that thing like you hate it. Really?
She has no hate.
Come on, Yesenia.
Man, I got to worry about making you mad. You're gonna have to pay extra for that. All right. Next.
Vanessa, come on.
No, I'm good.
Come
I
on.
might have germs.
Funny.
I don't know if it's allergies or germs.
Get energy.
You don't got the Bud Light virus, do you?
Get energy for your
No,
vacation.
I think I'd be like done. So I don't know if it's allergies or germs.
What is this? Piston ring.
Oh,
I bet you're wondering why was that in there.
Yeah.
I'll show you. Drive it in there, man. You got the hammer.
Come on.
Beat it. Just beat it. Look at that.
down.
That's just pretty. All right. I need a couple of head bolts. I'm hoping this thing will reach. Oh man, life loves me. Don't tell me you lost the head bolts.
I didn't.
Look down there. Look down there.
Yeah.
Okay, hold this. I will look for it because
What are the brass knuckles?
You know what?
What is that?
That's gonna clamp the.
Buddy.
That's gonna clamp
Right here. Head bolt.
the cylinder liner down, and then we can measure
The
the
push rods are there, so how many do you need?
I just need dose.
Okay. Good thing the push rods are in there.
Oh, and that's gonna push it.
It's going to hold the piston.
That lines up. This is for a different engine.
Oh, somebody loves me.
I need the short one there, Big Mike.
Okay.
If not, I'll get a couple of sleeves.
The whole time we've been in square one.
Why are you using that thing?
Because what this is going to do, awesome, brother, that might do it. What I'm going to do with this, here, Mike, you put these back.
Oh, the dudes.
Hopefully these will reach. So what this is going to do is I'm going to put a prescribed torque to this, and it's usually 50 foot-pounds, right?
That's fine.
So you say.
Yeah.
It's in the book. It's in the book.
Someone did some TIG welding right there, it looks like.
Yeah, somebody had bigger knuckles than I did. Alright, so, where's my torque wrench?
The one that we use.
The one I was going to hit Mike with.
Oh, it's right here.
See, he finds it.
I
Bring
wanna
me my
find it-
socket there,
I
Big
wanna
Mike.
find it before you can
This
use
is your
it.
phone, right?
You got my socket on there, buddy, or did we put that away?
Where's that,
He was on the engine.
Oh, on the breaker bar?
where's the breaker bar?
Uh-oh.
What are you looking for?
Check somebody's
Breaker bar.
pocket.
I put it back.
Where, you put the socket back?
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh man, look at
That's
this.
probably gonna be a
19.
19. Alright. So what I would do. No.
Oh,
Oh, somebody got it wrong.
Oh man.
16.
I wonder who said that. Yeah.
16, you see?
I'm gonna put
Try
my money
16.58, Mike.
65.8.
That's a 10.
Oh.
Uh,
16.
Oh, you got it right.
So I'm going to set this bad bear up for 50 foot-pounds. Then you would torque it.
Hey, man.
You can kind of hear it click. Okay, so I'm at 50 foot-pounds. Okay, so now what that's done is seated
The
seated the
liner.
liner.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have the prescribed Cummins tool. It's called a sled gauge. And what it does is it allows me to zero my dial indicator on the deck, and then I lift it up and I put it on the liner and I read the protrusion. So I'm going to,
You can't use a feeler gauge then.
no, it doesn't have that kind of, I know where you're going, but
Yeah.
they don't have the values I would need. The method would work, you're correct, but I don't have a spec.
Oh,
Actually, I'm gonna have to. So I'm kind of making do here. Now, how accurate this is going to be, I couldn't tell you, but I'm just kind of trying to demonstrate the theory.
But
Well-
do they have that tool downstairs? They do.
Oh no, not they haven't rebuilt
Oh.
Santa Ana.
Oh, is that?
So I would zero my gauge here. Okay, it's zero.
Let's see, which number are you looking at, or are you looking at?
Right here, but you have to set it up right now. Still playing with it.
So they don't do any rebuilds here in Garden Grove?
No.
Everything gets
So
sent to
what
Santa
I'm doing is I'm taking that zero, I'm gonna put it where my gauge is at, or my needle's at. This is why this is not the best way to do this. See, I'm chasing it.
oh, you're figuring out how.
So I'm gonna leave it at 20, so all I wanna do, lift that up, so I had it at 20, it's at 28, so I got 8 thousandths protrusion. And in this
I see.
particular engine, that's barely enough. Okay? And then I would, actually, they'll have you check it in 2 spots. Now this is not the desired way of doing this, okay? They have a gauge that rides on the block. I zero my meter to the block and I just simply lift it up and slide it over and drop it on there.
And where's that gauge?
That gauge is on order.
Hey, so how we hammered them in, let's say you just kind of hammered in a little bit, can you use this to cinch them down a
Sure.
bit?
Yeah, you can
okay,
do that.
yeah.
You don't have like a backup gauge or something?
No. So your sled gauge would be used to measure. Now, Cummins doesn't have a variance, meaning I can have this one at 30 thousandths and I can have this one at 10. Okay? Detroit does. Detroit's spec is 5 to 15 thousandths protrusion with no more than 3 thousandths between cylinders. So this is why you're going to see a guy can spend half a day just dropping liners to get everything to fit. Right?
On the chips too, right?
What's that?
On the bottom,
What about them?
the rings to make them even, right? Too.
What do you mean even?
Like that's what we were talking about. You can throw the rings on the bottom to make it even. It was right
Oh,
here,
the
right?
shims, yes, the shims.
Oh.
You say rings on the piston. Right? Yeah, if I need to adjust the height of the liner, I'll get my liner tool out, I'll pull the liner, I'll get the shims, which are basically washers. Or no, that's not a good term. What am I looking for? Spacers. They're very thin. I watched a guy with a set doing this, and he wondered why his finger was bleeding, because he was just zinging him around his finger. Not the smartest guy in the shed. And you would adjust your liner height using the shims.
Those shims, because it's in the motor, you know, that you got to make sure they don't come out so that the entire sphere.
They're round.
Oh,
They're
it's
round.
a whole sphere,
It's a
so
whole
yeah,
round.
it's not coming out.
Oh, it ain't coming out. No, if it comes out, you broke something big.
Yeah.
So it ain't coming out. So what you would do is you would measure your protrusion in each cylinder, and Cummins wants you to check it here and here, and here and here, 4 spots, to make sure it's sitting here, not like this or like that. So I'd have to move my tool to do it. And once you have your protrusions
You can
set,
leave this here though, but move the tool. Leave
well,
this in the same-
I would probably measure it here and measure it here and measure it here and measure it
You're
here,
done.
and then I'm done. And with the sled gauge, you do 1 liner at a time. Because if I had this liner in, I can't lay it flat because the other cylinder's there. Okay? So, you know, it goes back to the guy that just throws the engine together versus the guy that takes the time to put it together correctly. If I just throw this thing together, right? I just do what we did, drop them in.
You'll be stressing when
Okay.
it comes to firing it up.
Well, no, it'll probably run, but if I'm blowing head gaskets, it could be that one of these liners isn't within spec.
How often they blow a head gasket here? How does that go? And when that does happen, how does that go down?
Well,
Like,
usually when a head gasket goes, and you guys can correct me on this, you're gonna end up with oil in the coolant, or you're gonna end up with a dead cylinder not making any power, and you could end up with compression bleeding over into the other cylinder, and you're gonna have an engine running horribly bad, if it runs at all. Okay, and with the old diesels, you would actually see soot where the head gasket blew.
and they'll know which mechanic did it,
Coolant
right?
doesn't get in there by, that way in the engine.
Say that-
There's other means of getting coolant in the engine, not only by the head gasket.
Well,
You could get it through the oil cooler too.
yeah, no, you're right. I can get coolant in, but if I got coolant in my oil cooler, my engine's still gonna run good. If I've got a poorly running engine, that's a good point. He's exactly right. If I'm just doing I'm checking the oil in a dipstick, I have no complaints. And it looks like a chocolate milkshake, I've got a cooler bad, more than likely. But if I got a complaint that, hey, this thing's running really bad, no power, smoking, I got misfire codes.
And that's something different.
That's something different. And then I pull a dipstick and it's like looking like a chocolate milkshake. One could assume, or one could deduce that, well, I got high misfire codes in cylinder 4, and I got a chocolate milkshake in my oil pan, I've probably got a head gasket issue. Versus, I checked the oil on the fuel island, chocolate milkshake. Okay? But other than that, the engine runs fine. I'm probably going to the oil cooler. Probably going to the oil cooler. Because that's the only place I could get the exchange and still have the engine performing. Now, if it looks like a strawberry milkshake, well, that's easy. That's a transcooler.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's, well, I say that's easy. According to Allison, if I
Oh,
get,
because the
if I get,
transmission cooler hooks into the radiator?
it's fed coolant.
It's not a separate cooler?
It is a separate cooler.
Oh.
Not like your car, but it still uses engine coolant through the transcooler. That's
Oh.
actually a heat exchanger.
Oh.
Right? Now, if I've got antifreeze in my transmission cooler, I got problems because according to Allison, I got to pull that thing down completely, the transmission, clean it, put it back together.
With new clutches.
With new
because
clutches.
If they're contaminated with coolant, they're done.
They're done. Pretty much. Pretty much. Now, what we've done in the past on that is we just run into a puke. At that point, still gonna need one, so just run the life out of what's in there. And surprisingly, some of them gone a few years. Some of them failed the next
It's a good
month.
transmission, man.
You know? Yeah. All right. So, part of your assembly is that line of protrusion, and I apologize for not having a sled gauge. You just do that. Your wife called and said the beans on the stove are ready to go.
I get to eat beans?
Yeah. Now that we've got our liners sunk, we've got our protrusion correct, we're getting ready to install our pistons, we've got our piston ring kits. Okay? Anything I gotta be worried about on this?
Yeah, those.
The gap.
Where you put them on the piston.
Correct.
Part of it.
That's part of it, but what am I?
You gotta check and make sure it's the right size of the cylinder. And that it's not good. You have a,
Hand me a piston real quick, would you please?
I wanna hand you.
It don't matter.
Okay,
Just
okay.
give me a piston.
That's 6. It says 6 on the bottom.
Yeah, square it up in the bore. Set that one back for me, please. And I need my feeler gauge.
The gap.
I'm going to check the gap. The piston ring gap.
It's okay to file those rings?
Those different things.
You can if you need to. I would prefer that you get the right ring.
Yeah. I just was curious.
Some guys will. All right, I'm going to go with my smallest value here, and it's well, it might fit. Okay, so I got a 4,000 gap. Probably.
Because if you have no
I
gap,
got a 6,000 gap. Okay. So on your build sheet, you would have compression ring 1, compression ring 2, oil ring gaps. And you would enter those values in. Okay, then the QC guy comes along and he looks at your build sheet, and if he sees a gap that's out of spec, okay, he knows you need another set of rings. Can it be too big?
Yes.
If I have a ring gap that's too big,
Oil.
what's the problem? What probably is
The liner.
Tapered.
the liner?
Oh.
If I'm going back with used liners,
What liner?
this, what we just put in, piston liner, okay? If that gap is too big, that means my inside diameter on my liner is too big around. So if I'm thinking I'm gonna do a low budget rebuild and just put new rings on my pistons, hone the cylinders, put that crosshatch pattern back in, and sink those bad bears in there, my day just got ruined. Now, I could just say, ah, screw it, do it anyway, but at some point, that ring is not going to be able to expand enough out against the wall to seal against the cylinder wall. I'm going to get a lot of gases down in the
Can you get an oversized ring?
Nope.
No, okay. Okay.
Not typically. That's a good question. Typically on a linered engine, okay, when the ID is done, you can't go to Cummins and say, hey, I need an oversized piston. They're saying, no, you need a new liner. And then you got to buy a new liner. Now, you could run your original pistons with a new set of rings in a liner, a new liner. Cummins would rather sell you a liner kit, which would be a piston and, depending on the kit, a rod, or maybe it's just a piston, a wrist pin, and a set of rings. But it's all up, you know, they'll sell you rings in a liner. That's not, they'll sell you whatever you want. Right? This is where I would insert the hooker joke, but I don't.
These wrist pins, looks like you got
my virgin ears.
These wrist pins, it looks like you got a little clip. And once
got a little
you take
snap
that
ring in
out,
it.
the snap ring, you take that out, is you gotta press them out.
Some engines you do. That one I think I can just push out with my thumb.
Oh, really? So that's pretty good design then.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Some wrist pins are bolted to the connecting rod. That's called semi-floating.
Oh.
That one you have there is a full floating. Okay, it floats in there. Okay. So
the snap ring holds it in.
yeah,
That's
the
it.
snap ring holds it in. Now, you mentioned positioning. Okay. Most engine manufacturers do not want you to put the ring gap over the wrist pin because that's the weakest part of the piston. Okay. They would rather you stagger them at 20-degree. Bring me a piston, please. Sure. You want to set that on the table?
Number 6.
Okay. So I have a gap here. It's over here. I can feel it. Okay, and then I got. I meant to do that. That was pretty awesome, wasn't it? Asked me if I could do it twice. No. Okay, I got a gap here, and then I've got my oil control ring gap right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stagger these gaps. So I'm going to put one gap over here. I'm going to take this second gap. See, now I suspect I got a problem with this piston because this thing should be
move freely,
spinning
right?
relatively freely in here, and it's not. Okay.
Okay, hold it so you can.
Yeah, see, I would check this. Okay. So I'm going to put that gap there, and then I'm going to turn this gap
Where's the gap on that one? The one you're touching right
One is right,
right
here.
there.
now?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
And I'm going to put that gap there. Okay. Now, what happens? And I've seen guys do this. They line up all the gaps.
Oh, jeez.
Compression.
Oil gets past the piston.
I just built a brand new, worn out engine. If I line up all my gaps and I sink those bad bears in there, I've got a straight path for my compression gases to shoot past the ring and into the crankcase. It probably
Oil
wouldn't
too,
start.
right?
Oh, you wouldn't have to worry about oil. It may not even run at that point. You'd be like, you're not developing enough compression. And if it does run, it's probably going to smoke white smoke because it's not burning the fuel. So it's like, I don't know what's wrong with it. Well, you just built in blow by, bonehead, right? I watched the guy. I'm like, what are you going to do with that? Well, I'm going to put it in the. What's that? Well, they're lined up. Why? Cause. That's a great answer. Cause. Is that C-U-Z or C-A-U-S-E? What is that?
C-U-Z.
I mean, I don't know. It's downtown Long Beach, probably C-U-Z, right? If I'm up on the east side, it's C-A-U-S-E and probably a comma because you know how we are with our English. We're fucking anal. Problem is, he just wiped out that. He wasted his time building that motor. What's the fix? Well, you got to tear it apart. You got to pull the. You got to do it again. Right? So I let the guy sink the first piston. I'm like, you think that's going to hold pressure? Yeah. I said, well, so when I put my ruler down here and it goes right all the way through, the gases are not going to do that? Oh, I didn't think. Yeah, you're good at that, not thinking. Let's not start now because you're not very good at it. Okay? So we're going to stagger those rings. Okay? Now, let's go ahead. I'll get the ring compressor and we'll drive these bad bears in there. Okay? Oh, my manicure.
It's the ring compressor.
Looks like
I did
scissors,
not
kind
hear
of.
that.
Big scissors.
Well, it should be a big cylinder that you clamp right
Yeah,
in.
it depends on what style they have. Oh, look, it's over there. You got it.
Oh, he's got it, okay. But you know, that's right, we didn't use it taking them out, because you don't need it taking them out.
Who are you packing up for?
Unas tijeras así grandotas, las abres y
Did you spend time in prison?
le metes así,